So for this video on Library Designer, we're going to review kind of the overall interface and the features, kind of a beginner's guide if you've never used it before. By now you should have already set up the Library Designer database, built a database from the previous video, and you've maybe done a test to verify that it's properly communicating with your factory. So that should be done. So if you've never seen it in action, please consider setting aside some time to watch not only this video but the others that follow. It might take a few minutes to kind of wrap your head around how it works. So hopefully after watching this and the next few, you'll perhaps have a better understanding, and know how to leverage this to assist your library data development. So here it is, Library Designer. We've analyzed our entire library. So every product, every sub-assembly, every category, every part, every prompt, every draw token and machine token, every formula, everything from your factory database, it's in here. So no stone is ever left unturned. The only thing that's not in here is your specification group content, so your globals and your material and that's different. This is just your products and sub-assemblies. So also, because this information is inside a database, so over here to a prompt here, we can see that like this prompt is common amongst all the other cabinets. In this case, it's exactly the same. This left finished end is exactly the same in amongst all of these, and that's kind of the whole purpose of this tool, what makes it so powerful. So because what that means is, if I want to make a change, say to the value, right now this says 0, but as soon as I start typing something in here, every product or sub-assembly, whatever's listed in these windows down here, will also be changed inside of the Library Designer database. First it makes a change, and then you would hit this commit to push it over to your actual spreadsheets. That's when it updates the spreadsheet, is after you click the commit button. And then inside Library Designer Tools, these buttons will sort of illuminate. So notice how a lot of them are dimmed out. And it kind of depends on what you currently have selected. So if I have, a product selected, I can add a prompt to a product. I can add parts, I can add sub-assemblies, but you cannot add a machine token, right? Because you do not add machine tokens to a product. You would add a machine token if you go to a part. If I click on a part, so now you can add a machine token to a part, but you cannot add a prompt to a part, right? So it's sensitive to whatever you have selected. And also notice while we're clicking around, this pathing here becomes illuminated, or it changes. So if you get in kind of deep, if you're drilling way down into a machine token and you forget what you're looking at, you can click on this, which will send you back up the chain. So this is sort of your map, your path of what you're currently looking at. Ironically, you don't technically design your library in Library Designer. Maybe it was named incorrectly, but this tool is only for editing existing products and not for creating new products from scratch. Generally, by the time you open this up, you already know exactly what it is you need to edit in your library. So a lot of times, often we'll have like a notepad here open with some new formulas that I want to paste in. Like this was my old one, and then here's my new one. And we cannot see the result of the formulas. So if you're looking at a product and you're looking at something here and there's a formula, if I can find a formula here. So here's a formula, right? You'll notice, unlike Excel, or when you're in this actual spreadsheet, you can see, is this an error? What is it evaluating to? We cannot see that here. And that was intentionally done, not only for performance and speed, it's much quicker if we don't have to calculate. That's not the point of this. The point is it's like a giant find and replace tool almost, I guess you could say. So because of that, because it's hard to check for errors, you'll always want to write your formulas in Toolbox. Test them, get it to how you want there, and then you open this up to go and propagate or implement those changes across the board, across the library. And speaking of formulas, some of these formulas, if they get to be really big, there's a little button right here that pops it open so that you can see the whole formula in case it runs off of your screen. All right, so what are some things we can do here? We can add prompts. So if I have a new prompt that I want to add to all of these products, you can shift click, this whole category here, and then you would click add. And then, simply start typing what is the name of the new prompt, what is the value. Generally, you would never do this. It's a lot of typing, but we'll get into that a little bit later on one of the exercises. Because a lot of times what I like to do is I like to copy and paste. Say I have a bunch of new prompts, and I will suck them into here first. So then I can pick the new prompt like this, and then hit copy the new prompt. Copy to clipboard. See, all of this is already filled out for me because I've already theoretically tested it in Toolbox. So I would copy that to a clipboard. Maybe this is a temporary product, and then I would pick my other ones, and then you would hit paste, and then it's going to ask you, well, where do you want to put this? Well, we can either just put it at the bottom of the visible, we can make it the first invisible, and that has to do with that first blank row in the spreadsheet. Or we can specify I want it to be above a specific product or prompt or below. So let's say I want it, below, inside of this product here, I want it to go below right finished in. And then I hit paste, and then it's going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit cancel because I haven't backed up my database yet, so I don't want to actually make the change. So speaking of backing up, maybe I should show that really quick. So if you're wanting to follow along and do some experimenting, or if you're unsure, nervous, you can take your factory. Of course, it's nice that I have mine is on disk here, and I'm just going to hit copy and paste, and I've just made a backup. So I'm free to experiment and try different things, and I can just simply roll back to this copied database, and I'll be back to where I was. So I went ahead and did that, so now I can experiment with things and not be concerned about what happens. So besides copying and pasting a prompt, we can also do parts, machine tokens, hardware, and sub-assemblies. They also have a copy-paste button when you pick on them. And that's kind of the nice thing about the copy-paste, so that you avoid human error of having to type the same thing over and over again. So we only need to input the thing once, and it's just a much easier. And we'll go through some of that on the exercises in the following videos. We can copy and paste multiple prompts at a time. Originally, when this tool first was developed, you could not do this. But after much arm twisting, we can now. I'm trying to find an example here. So let's take all these. And let's say these are all new, and we can copy the clipboard, and it's got 7 or 8 here, right? Prompts. And then you can go to another product or multiple products. And it's the same thing. If you just hit paste, you designate where you want it, and it'll put all 8 prompts at once. So that's nice. Some of the other areas don't have that feature. It will require some additional special development to accommodate that, but at least the prompts, which is when this comes up most commonly, luckily the prompts does have that ability. What else can we do here? For the prompts, there's a move. So if you don't like where this prompt is, you can slide it up and down like that. And then when you hit OK and you hit commit, it will rebuild the whole spreadsheet in the different order that you set it as. So that might be nice for organizing, how your parts or your prompts are presented. So besides prompts, I like to go into this carcass non-subassembly. It's a little bit easier to follow. You can add a new machine token. You can make it the first, the last, before, or after a specific token. So just like prompts, you can do the same thing with tokens, and the same thing with all of these, really. You'll notice there's nowhere in this interface is a right click. A lot of areas in Microvellum have right clicks. This is all left click. Everything's left click. The only thing is a right click is in the find and replace utility, and we will get to that in the next video. But for now, there's no right clicking. It's all just what you see here. Let's take a look at this one part here, because the ability to edit multiple parts at once. Well, this isn't a good one. Okay, so this is a better example here. I went into my carcass subassembly, found the blind panel, and noticed that it's common amongst all these other subassemblies. And this is where the utility can literally save you days of just monotonous work with a single click. Because if you change this one part, it's going to affect all of these other blind panels left, because they're considered to be, common. And then, so let's see here, if we just make a change to the width, do something really obvious, +2. Normally I wouldn't do a hard lock imperial number, but for the sake of demonstration, I've edited the formula. And you'll notice now if I can view my change, and it actually keeps a record of all of your changes. So you'll have the previous value and then the new value. And the nice thing that it keeps track of, if you should change your mind, you can revert this change. So you decide, no, on this particular one, I'm going to revert that. And so it'll revert it. So now when we go look, and it's back to how it was. So that's what those 2 buttons are for there. And then, like I mentioned previously, hitting this commit is when it's going to go send it out to the spreadsheets. And I would recommend clicking this commit frequently. Don't let it build up too much. I figure whenever I'm in this one particular area and I do change, and before I leave this area, I'll go ahead and hit commit. And I just don't let that build up. There are some instances where if you get too many changes at once, they can perhaps start to contradict one another. For example, you edit some parts and then you delete some parts, and then you edit some parts, and you'll end up deleting. It'll try to delete a part that's not there, and just to avoid that kind of a paradox situation for the program when it goes and tries to make its edits, I just don't let it build up too much. And then, like I said, most importantly, especially if you're new at this tool, always do that backup of your database before using this, because the changes that you make are, of course, permanent. So they're only undo is to use the tool, input the data back in the way it was, so to undo it. Sometimes that's easy, like a single little formula, but if, let's say, you accidentally delete a dozen prompts, that could take a little bit longer to recover from if you don't have a backup. So next thing I want to explain, there's this thing here called an alias. So you'll see an alias for the part names. I think almost everything has an alias. If you look at the prompts, I guess the prompts don't have an alias, but I think the tokens do. Yeah, the tokens have an alias. A lot of things have an alias. So what that is, when the spreadsheets are being analyzed, it's coming through this subassembly and it found all these parts, and there's a formula, right? The name of the part is a formula. So it does its best to come up with, to evaluate that formula and give us a name. So in this case, when it evaluated that formula, it came up with base left side open. And so it gave it an alias. So that way we have something to look at here inside of our Library Designer. Sometimes you'll notice, like on some of those tokens, it evaluated to 0, which actually that kind of makes sense. 0 means it evidently was off, so that's not uncommon to see a 0. But you can put in here, like this is actually a construction token. You can put that in there, and now it's going to say that alias. But as soon as you build a new database, that's going to go back to 0 again. So you don't want to spend too much time on that. If it's blank, evidently this was unable to evaluate for whatever the reason. Sometimes that happens. It was not able to evaluate anything, and so it would just come up to either be a blank or a 0. The next thing, let's go back to a product here. We have, when you click on the product, we have the list of calculators, the list of tabs, those prompt tabs, and then the warning list. So maybe let's look at the actual spreadsheet. So I just went ahead and real quickly opened up this one-door base in the spreadsheet, so we can kind of compare. So with high depth, and here, so here's the tab lists in the spreadsheet. And the best thing they could do to come up with this tab list is that's separated by that little squiggly sign that, I forget the name of that, upper left on your keyboard. So we have main, finishing, interior, door options, advanced options, and then 0 is effectively like a placeholder. And sure enough, it matches this. So that's how that works, and you can come in here if you want to add more prompts. You can do that one at a time by editing this, or we can actually do a find and replace to do a real quick edit across a whole bunch of products. More on that in the next find and replace, or the find and replace video. And same thing with the warning list. So we have a couple of warnings here in this product. There's actually 2. Here it is. Yeah, P is your warning list. So these 2 are just separated by the squiggly line right there. So that's kind of how that works. Calculator list, of course, is going to be there's your calculator on column R. So in this case, it just has one calculator, so it's just going to have one calculator. Okay, so right now we just have product view right here on the top left, prompt view, and like a view parts or parts view. And I know someday Microvellum will add more views, like perhaps a token view, so that'll be nice. So when you change these views, it's all the same data. It's just presented to us in a different way. So if I go to a prompt view and then expand this open here, you'll see, every single prompt in the library alphabetized in an alphabetized list. And same with the parts view. The tree structure will sort by part name. And this way it just becomes much easier to locate, similar parts of the same name. So like, let's say you're adding a machine token or an activity token, it would become much easier to do with this view as well. So if you want to make sure you don't miss this back part, you can pick them all like that. And it's kind of interesting way to examine your library. You can see what things are different and why. If you want to see what's the difference between these nailers, okay. So if I hold down the shift or the control key and look, and the things that are the same will remain, but the things that are different will disappear. So I can see that between these two nailers, everything's the same except for that Z origin, which I can see turning on and off. So it becomes a nice little tool to try to learn about maybe inconsistencies in your library data. Okay, let's go back to the products. So as I mentioned before, these three windows are like a preview of what's about to change. And these checkboxes are very interesting. So this is saying, it gives you the opportunity to uncheck or to make a change to only a select item. So right now, these are common, okay? So the one-door base and the one-door base face frame, all four of these are exactly the same door library prompt. Let's say I'm going to make a change that I don't want the face frame to be included. So if I uncheck this, what you're saying is, you're severing the connection. Now the trick is to keep in mind the program doesn't quite know when you're done checking and unchecking. I may be still doing so, and perhaps someday there'll be a refresh button or an OK button. I think that's probably what they need. So what I like to do is to get it to refresh before you click up in here and do anything. Click away for a moment, click back, and now you'll see that one-door base face frame is truly disconnected. And so now you can come up in here, make a change, and it'll only affect these three instead of the four. So that's a good way to unhook things, make them uncommon. So now if I go to that product over here in my face frame category, go to my door library, and now I will see that this is now all alone. It's all by itself because I unhooked it. And so now basically what had happened in the database, it now has a new record. So now it's all by itself. So let's see, what else can we look at? The categories section here, save category, move category. So yeah, you can start to categorize all of your parts. So you could say, here's all my tops. All right, so here's the tops and then the bottoms. However, this is sort of, they work, but any setup that you developed, it's going to be lost next time you build a new database. So just kind of be aware of that. This is something that it's for the future, really. It hasn't been fully set up yet. And also, while I'm looking at this, notice how none of these have part names. It's because what I was mentioning earlier, the name is a formula, and so it was not, for whatever the reason, it was not able to evaluate the name of the formula. So there's no alias. But if you scroll down here, most of them do have an alias. The big majority of them do. Let's see. The find and replace is a very big part of this tool. It's extremely powerful. So you want to check out the using find and replace in Library Designer video for an exhaustive information on how to use this, and there's some examples and some tips on using that. So really, this whole thing is an extremely powerful tool, and there's so much more to talk about and to cover. A lot of tips and tricks to review. Having used this for many years now, I've got a number of lessons that I've learned, and I'd like to pass on to all data developers out there that are wanting to learn more. So please, if you plan on using this tool, check out the remaining few videos, the find and replace, the tips and tricks. We have some sample exercises. These are all kind of chock full of additional information to help you be successful with using this tool.